Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is my dear friend Gilly. Gilly is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. Gilly is angelic by nature. She is she carries deep ancient wisdom through embodiment of all that she is, and she's a sunshine in human form. And it's such an honor to have you on here today, Gilly, and we're live in Las Vegas in my backyard, which feels really good. It's
Mhm.
my first time doing a podcast in the backyard in person, so this is really cool. The weather's perfect, and I'm really happy to have you on.
Feels so special to be here and such an honor to be on your podcast as such a dear friend and a teacher as well. So thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
trusting me.
For sure. Yeah, we got some amazing topics for you guys today. We're going to talk about Gilly's awakening journey, and then we're going to dive into acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and whatever else comes through. So I'm really excited.
Happy to answer it, guys.
Yep. So how did it all start for you with your awakening journey?
Ah, it's a very deep question because we can have awakenings in so many ways. And when I was with it this morning, I really tuned into how there were so many moments in my life that continued the awakening journey. And I truly do believe that awakening will be all the way through your life, all the way past life. Like it's just like once you open, there's continual growth, there's continual embodiment, there's just continual messages, there's continual everything. It's just continual.
Yep, for sure.
So for me, I was pretty young. I was 9, and I would say that was the first time I started having visions and started like seeing things in a different way. I actually, my entire family at the same time, my mom, my dad, and me got Lyme disease
Oh wow.
simultaneously,
Oh wow.
and they were going through a divorce. My dad was having an affair. There was a lot of just like, there was just uh, pretty intense energy. And through that, I developed a lot of different symptoms, I would say. And how I look at symptoms now is like symptoms, physical symptoms for anyone is a way to look at yourself deeper. It's like if we didn't have these symptoms on the physical part in this human realm, maybe we wouldn't dive deep. So they are an access to awakening.
For sure.
There's an access to like, okay, what's going on? I could just say this is a symptom, or I could really get to the core of it. And one of my main symptoms then, I was everything with my gut and skin and anxiety, but it was mostly insomnia. So I would literally spend nights just like awake.
Hmm.
And my mom, oh, I forgot about this part. Not only did that happen, I was like, there's more to this. My mom then got breast cancer
Oh
a
wow.
month after that, and then my dad got throat cancer. So then I was a 9-year-old experiencing all this, angry with my dad and taking care of my mom.
So
So,
that's like communication and heart.
mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's like, how do I uh, take care of someone, but I don't know what to speak, and I was just so confused. It was a very confusing time. And as we know now, with confusion comes clarity, but back then it just feels so scary. It
Hmm.
feels terrifying.
Yeah.
And the visions I would have at night would actually start to come true. And so I knew right then and there, like there was something different. And I would go to connect to nature. I lived on 20 acres of land. So even with the chaos in the house, I had so much nature surrounding me.
Hmm.
And that's when I really tuned in to like, oh, this is what the earth has created for us. This is something that I can go to, that I can feel like met in a way. I can feel safe in a way. It's like, okay, parents and family don't understand me, but I'm seen and I'm safe and I'm connected and I belong.
Hmm.
It's like a great sense of belonging because nature does not exclude. So my connection with nature through my health was like the first avenue of awakening. And then it went into like 11 years old and my first breathwork journey where I completely left my body.
That's really awesome. Like in our generation, it's so rare to be introduced to those kind of things so early, you know?
Yeah.
Do you remember was it like holotropic breathing, or was it, do you remember anything about what kind of breath work it was?
Mm. Well, I remember it was something my dad wanted me to do, which was so interesting because at that moment I wanted to defy everything my dad wanted me to do. So I had a lot of resistance.
Hmm.
Now that I look back at it, there was probably resistance because there was something else I needed to see.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the exact breath, but all I remember is like blacking out and sobbing and screaming and then like waking up and like not knowing where I was and like connecting to different things. Like I saw so many timelines of my life and it was terrifying. And
Wow.
I told the teacher like I told my dad I was like I will never do this again.
So
Like
when you blacked out, do you remember like going somewhere, or did you have like an out of body experience?
definitely out of body. Definitely felt like what now would be like a dark hole of like not being alive in a sense, or like where did I go? It wasn't like I was sleeping or resting. It was this space of like unknown. Like it
Okay.
was an unknowing. And then I remember waking myself up from like screaming and crying and seeing visions of like my life. And I don't remember exactly what they were, but in that moment as a child, I was like terrified. It was also super exciting, but like,
Yeah, yeah. Who do you, I didn't know who to talk to when I was a kid with these kind of experiences, right? Like, that's so cool that your family introduced you to that so young.
I do feel blessed with that. And yeah, I feel very blessed with the connection to nature that they introduced me to as well. And like more of a holistic way of
Hmm.
being.
Hmm.
And I think through that, I knew, so half of me, it was like a split identity. Like half of me could feel the connection to greater power, to universe, to God, to source. And the other half was like trying to fit in and be a preteen teenager.
Right.
So from then, it was like I would use alcohol in particular and men more so to like cope for all the pain and confusion I was feeling.
Mm.
And I would still have those moments. But alcohol protected me from feeling what I was almost feeling in the breath work. Again, looking back to it, I was like, that was so much pain, which was like death in a way, which was abandonment. It was all the things and the core wounds that show up. And you're like, okay, I don't want to go there again. So what can I do to avoid that?
Yeah, it's it makes me think about when I was a kid, like 10 years old,
Mhm.
maybe 11. I just moved to a new state. I left all my friends back in Maryland, and I remember just being like having all these experiences. Like these spirits would come,
Mhm.
and like I was having like knocking on the inside of the attic wall and like crazy stuff like that, you know?
Mhm.
And like
Mhm.
I didn't know anybody who had any answers. I
Mhm.
didn't know how to deal with it. So the thing that it's kind of weird to say, but like the thing that like took me out of it was finding pornography. It
Mhm.
was really, it
Mhm.
was like, it was like this way to shut off that world.
Yeah.
And there was like this deep, but back then the internet was so slow,
Mhm.
it would take like 4 hours to download like a 10-second clip, and like, but like I wanted to share that because for a lot of men, that was like an avenue that started opening up when the
Mhm.
internet started. And like it was a big, it was the way that I was able to like shut all that off.
Mhm.
And then I felt like that brought me back into like a full sleep,
Mhm.
like fully asleep again.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like from age like 12, around when The Sixth Sense came out, that movie,
Mhm.
that like terrified me because I was like, that's actually happening to me,
Mhm.
you know? And then
Mhm.
and then coming back awake like around 24, 25.
Mhm.
Did you have something like that where you had like a phase where you kind of like shut all that off, all your gifts?
Well, I think that was through alcohol and blacking
Yeah.
out and men. I didn't get into porn, but I was very like I was more so in like if you could say there was an addiction at that time, it would be men, getting validation from men,
Hmm.
and alcohol. And it's so interesting you bring up porn because when you think of those three things, there's something that does that brings us back to like the quote unquote whatever normal is.
Hmm.
It brings us back to the normal world.
Right.
When we have these crazy experiences that no one understands, it's like, how can I be seen? Like there's again, this is what I teach now. It's like there's these core wounds. How do I fit in? So do I belong? Am I seen? Can my voice be heard? Can I feel safe in my body? Am I going to be like abandoned and unconditionally loved? There's all these spaces. And so when we start having these awakenings, there's so much confusion. Like we don't know who to turn to
Hmm.
because we might be deemed as crazy
Hmm.
or maybe demonic or just anything or wild in that way. So these coping mechanisms are what society conditions us to protect us in a way, but it just keeps us stuck.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it's so interesting you bring that up because this is such a part of like being seen in that as like so many men are can feel shame from going there
Hmm.
and like all they really need is like there's no shame there. Like it's almost this like I'm sorry that this was like what was brought to you to find sanity
Right.
in the world. Like there's like a deep apology almost from the earth. It's like, wow, like so much compassion and grace for the masculine that they were shamed that this is what could help them sleep or could relieve stress. Like I
Hmm.
talk to a lot of men that are like, oh, I did it just to feel like my nervous system. It would calm their nervous system.
Yeah.
And like alcohol, one thing for me is I wasn't sleeping. So when I drink, I would at least sleep throughout the night. I would
Mm.
like black out and it wasn't great, but I was at least waking up like, oh my God, I didn't stare at a wall and have crazy, scary things happening all
Yeah.
night. Like, fuck.
Yeah, for sure. And like I want to clarify a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I was like 11, 12 years old. Everybody was bringing in like Playboys into the
Yeah.
locker room and it was like I didn't resonate with that at all. I was like why are they doing that? You
Yeah.
know? And like then one of my friends was like, "Oh, just try it. Like see what it's about." You know? And as a young boy, I was like exploring my sexuality, didn't understand anything, I was just like, okay, they're doing it, like they're bringing in these playboys and talking about it all the time, like I'll just see what this is all about.
Mhm.
It never really like did anything for me. It
Yeah.
never like satiated my soul
Oh
or
no.
made me feel connected. It was the opposite, right? It was like disconnection from my gifts, disconnection from connection. And there were some benefits, right? Where it like taught me different things in the bedroom, but like not really deep connection, which came later,
Mhm.
but yeah, it was interesting. And so yeah, I felt I felt like that was important to state because I haven't ever shared that on the
Mhm.
podcast, but it was a part of my awakening.
Mhm.
And it's like the feminine has that validation piece, right? That you were sharing, and then the masculine gets that validation through that, right? Because like all these endorphins and dopamine gets released, and then it's like, oh, I'm like normal, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't really ever want to be normal, but that just happened, but and
Well, we want to fit in. Like literally, again, it's like a wound of like belonging. It's like so you try all these caps on almost. You're like, okay, let me try this.
mm-hmm,
Maybe that will satiate something, and maybe it satiates a part of our ego or it helps in some way. But it's again what you said, it's not actually connecting to heart and soul. And that's what the journey of awakening is. It's like these things almost have to happen to us. Like everyone that I talk about everyone that I talk to has something that they were coping with or using or abusing to then awaken them into that. So it is an avenue. So I'm so happy you brought that up. That's why I like reiterated. I didn't just skip by that because, I work with so many male clients and like talking to them in that way and reconditioning like the deeper parts of the emotions underneath it, because a lot of us have shame from our past.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a way that we were able to look at ourselves deeper. Like everyone I talk to that I feel that I look up to as like really embodying their awakening, they all experienced a lot of different trauma when they were
Mm-hmm.
young. They, alcohol, drugs, sex, porn, coping, addiction, addictions in all ways, to
Right.
food, to drugs, to yada yada. I'm in
Right.
a relationship,
Yeah. And you
So
mentioned shame.
yeah.
And when we talk about frequency, shame and guilt are like the
Hmm.
lowest frequency below even fear.
Yeah.
So, coming and sharing and
Hmm.
actually like loving on those parts of
Hmm.
self
Hmm.
is so important, because then it takes us out of that shame and it starts to
Hmm.
build us back up to unconditional love,
Hmm.
which is that highest frequency,
Hmm.
which is actually what eventually came and awakened me
Hmm.
at 24,
Yeah.
25. So it was like, it's interesting to talk about because it's like this kind of like shameful. I never really felt too much shame around it. It was just kind of like everybody was doing it, but like there probably was a small piece of me that was. But then it like alchemized eventually into like experiencing a really deep connection with
Hmm.
an ex-girlfriend, and having this deep depression after the breakup and coming out of that, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, so you're young, you're experiencing all these things. So then where did it evolve from there?
I'm gonna hop, skip, and jump because there's so many little micro moments,
Okay.
but I think a big piece about it is when I was 20 or 21, that I did say I would go for about 3 years. I went more down the path of like coping and being a college student. And then as I was like getting out of that and getting more into coming back to truth and realizing that there was something, like coming back to that girl that did see it and was like, actually, I don't want to live this way.
Hmm.
And I stopped drinking. I stopped partying with my friends. So I left a bunch of my friends. And then I came into this beautiful relationship who is completely on the health and wellness. Like all the
Mm.
biohacking stuff now, they were doing it, let's see, 15 years ago. So I was introduced to like every type of ozone water, hydrogen water, like reverse osmosis. They had red lights all in their house, saunas. Like it was just like, whoa. And my parents had asked me to get acupuncture when I was younger, but that was something I said no to because I actually had a fear of needles.
Mm.
So then they shared it with me, and I was like, I've been interested in this in a while, And I
Hmm.
had I had my health stuff had resurfaced again because I stopped drinking.
Hmm.
So of course that can cope it, but then I stopped drinking, and I'm like, I'm gonna feel great, and then it was like everything unfurled even more. So then I went to my first acupuncture session, and she was in her 30s. She had her own business. Not only did I feel a resonance of like I saw myself there, but like before I even had a session, but I had a resonance with the whole experience. And after I had my first session, I was so curious. And I asked her so many questions. And I actually asked if I could like start shadowing her. I just knew right away that like within that, it was there was the simplicity of Eastern medicine, that nothing is outside of you, nothing is wrong with you. The body just needs to come back into balance and harmony. All the systems, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the musculoskeletal system, the immune system, if they're not working in coherence, just like nature, it's like they're not mirroring nature. There's something out, there's nothing outside of us, but there's just excess and deficiency in places that need to be balanced.
Hmm.
And I was just like, what? That's just so simple. So I started reading all the books on all the Eastern ways and the ancient practices and this medicine that was 3,500 years old. And I'm like, this is the way.
Hmm.
And within 3 sessions, I started like all my symptoms started shifting. Like I could digest food,
Wow.
I could sleep. I wasn't getting breaking out in rashes. I wasn't having, oh my God, I had so many different things. I can't even go into all of them. But
Hmm.
But like so many things shifted in my body. Oh, I didn't have a cycle, my cycle was all completely botched up. I was freezing, then cold. Like there's just so many things that came back into balance. And within that, I was like, wow, my soul knew that I wanted to do this and support this medicine with others, not only myself. So there was like an imprint in my body, and it happened so quickly that was like the soul resonance. So then there was an awakening, like through that, through my sessions, I would just go into these places of complete agendaless presence, like complete nothingness, but
Mm,
like the beauty of just like stillness, of like, oh, nothing has to be done. My body is so healthy, like they're like all of our bodies are. We're all connected, we're all one. We just get to rest in this and allow the body to reorganize and trust it.
hmm.
So there's trust.
Yeah.
So within that, I mean, that was the first state I feel like I experienced peace in my awakening. Like, because before it was a little bit more chaos.
Well, that's such a blessing because so many of us are constantly doing anything
Mm-hmm.
to numb out,
Mm-hmm.
to not feel,
Mm-hmm.
to not go into those,
Mm-hmm.
shadow aspects of self, to really dive into like, why am I having this rash?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I
Mm-hmm.
having this pain?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, it's it's an epidemic
Yep.
around the whole world where now it's like, oh, what Netflix shows are you watching? What are you doing for fun? Where are you going out drinking? Like it's like work, drinking, sleep, work, drinking, sleep. It's like this crazy cycle that society's propagated,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for the ability to just find that stillness and to be able to just
Mm-hmm.
find that um I've heard it called the nothing box,
Yeah.
where it's like there's nothing there. It's just stillness, just beingness,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And for
Yep.
those of us that get to go to that space and are really willing to sit with themselves and
Mm-hmm.
just be,
Mm-hmm.
it's really it's really profound.
Mm. Yeah, I love that you share that because what comes in is like, wow, that's like the next evolution of awakening because you can do it with yourself. And then how do you move about a chaotic world? How do you find alignment in chaos when like and in human relationships? Because that's the next space. It's like we're on Earth to be humans.
Hmm.
We're not meant to just like descend and some people are. Their soul contract is like go be a monk.
Hmm.
But like how can I bring this level of nervous system regulation, which then brings peace, which then brings stillness and literally like awake awareness and a gentlest presence throughout my entire life. So that's like the next phase. And you are taught about that in a way in Chinese medicine, but it's so complex that it's like you have to really start to weed out like what is the core of it.
Hmm.
And that, that's the dance of life.
So for those that don't know,
Yeah.
uh, why is it called acupuncture and Chinese medicine? Is it
Hmm.
because in school they teach you all these other um, ways of healing the body with herbs and other things, right?
Yeah, so acupuncture is just like one part. It's like but it's such a big part of it, but it's just one part. So Chinese medicine is an umbrella of
Mm-hmm.
different modalities. There's moxa, there's cupping, there's herbs. Yeah, I mean there's 478 Chinese herbs. Yeah, don't get
Okay,
me
that's
wrong
a
with that. 478. I think there's 375 points on the body. So the herbs is such a big part of it
hmm.
because herbs along with the healing of the body. But then there's like the clinical counseling aspect. They really do look at like the program consisted of so many different things like the anatomy, the PT, there's you're learning ortho neuro evaluation. Like there's so much that you have to know that so it's an umbrella, it's like an all-encompassing space. Like you are through that degree, you are a certified nutritionist because you learn all about nutrition, certified herbalist, doctor of acupuncture, and doctor of Chinese medicine and licensed acupuncturist if you continue to get your license.
Okay.
But I think specifically because there's needles involved, there's like that extra added step when everything else is, in its own. But yeah, I mean, every single tool, it's just, and even like Yen, I'm saying this wrong, like abdominal massage, and there's not Rolfing.
Gua sha?
And oh, gua sha. No. Well, I'm not thinking, okay, gua sha. There's, you see nowadays all the face rollers. Everyone's doing jade face rollers. That like rollers that came from Chinese medicine.
Hmm.
There's a whole branch of like facial rejuvenation acupuncture because it's so good for just bringing, it's bringing collagen to the body. It's bringing elasticity. It's bringing energy to the energetic channels. So, and with acupuncture, it's the fascia system. And the fascia system is also a spirit being. Like
Oh
our
yeah.
fascial system is literally an interconnected network of spirit because it's just energy, but it's also fascia and tissue.
Hmm.
So that's why I think they were so genius to find that so long ago to discover how do I find points along the body? The points are actually bound energy in the fascia that they all have different things that they do, and then they all have specific indications that they treat, and then a different harmony of how like a treatment is.
Yeah, so my background's in physical therapy, and when I found myofascial release,
Hmm.
that changed everything.
Hmm.
I was the only one in my class of 25 to like fully unwind my body and fully like just release,
Hmm.
and I unwound for 5 hours
Hmm.
when I went home and then I felt like a newborn baby because it was what I learned later. I went on to continue to learn from John Barnes, who is like the myofascial guru.
Hmm.
He has a center in Sedona and in Philadelphia, and he would have us go into that stillness and just, but like without meditation, we would just kind of the frequency of the space, like 100 people all doing it. It was like I would just get into that space, and then my body would just start doing things like unwinding, they call it.
Mm.
And then I would start swimming like this, right? Like with my arms up. And then I remembered it was a trauma from childhood that I had blocked out.
Mm.
And then the myofascia was unwinding and showing me that because I was in that spot of space of stillness, and then it fully was able to integrate, and I could rewire that story and
Right.
integrate it into my body instead of blocking it out. And it was just a really
Mm.
profound modality for me. So yeah, the fascia system is profound. I know it's very integrated into Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a question that I'm just curious about. So you said there's hundreds of herbs,
Mm-hmm.
and then some of the Chinese medicine they use like parts of animals, right? So that's not included in those herbs, right?
Well, there's deer antler, it's one of the herbs, and then cicadas, like the bugs, there's scorpions, but they're all dried. So yeah, they do use
They
them.
consider that like herbs.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's specific ones. If I can remember all of them, this is
Bringing it
about
back.
20 years ago. Just
Yeah.
kidding. Wait, 15.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we would actually for school, we would have samples of each of the 478 herbs and they'd be dried. So you'd have to keep them in the freezer because some would smell because they
Hmm.
were animals or bugs, and we'd have to put them on a board to just memorize every herb, what it looked like, what the qualities were, what it tasted like, because every herb has a different quality, and that depends on the person. So it's all like, again, why I fell in love with Chinese medicine is because, Western medicine is you come in, you list your symptoms, and they just give you something.
Like a band-aid,
Yeah,
quote unquote, to
exactly.
put
They're
over it.
giving you something. And I just want a disclaimer right now. I worked with a lot of Western medical facilities. Like I was in a Rady's Children's Hospital and a cancer center, And I do see the benefit of both sometimes as like acupuncture and Chinese medicine as an adjunctive modality. Like I do see the spirit of how they do combine. And the standard Western medicine is just very like no one feels seen and heard. And all we're trying to do, all human beings want is to be loved, seen, heard, nourished, like touched and seen for their soul, not just like seen in their protectors or their ego.
Right.
So, like, what I loved about my session as well, and I think what I loved so much about being a practitioner in that way is all the questions. Like, you were asked so many questions to intimately get to know your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to understand your body more. Oh, I didn't notice that. Wow, I do sweat easily when I do this. Oh, I get really cold hands and feet. Oh, wow, I have like 10 bowel movements a day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, oh no, my periods are this way, or like, oh, I have this one clicking pain, or I have ringing in my ears, little things. And so that's really getting to know the underlying constitution. Because in Chinese medicine, there's 5 elements, that has each element that all combine, but then they all have constitutions. And not everyone is one constitution. Like no one is a textbook, even in TCM. And this is like part of my journey now. And I think what helped me stand out a lot from other acupuncturists because
What
I
is TCM?
traditional Chinese
Oh,
medicine.
okay.
It's like some people it can be a little westernized because they're like seeing a client and they're like, okay, let me look at the textbook and see what constitution they match versus the actual awakening happens when a soul and a body is listened to, in my eyes. So I took all the knowledge that I had from Chinese medicine and what I learned from textbooks, what I learned from actual experience. And then when I would meet a client, it was like, let me listen. And one of my mentors told me this because I started working as well. And this stayed with me throughout my life. And it's the simplest thing, but it's one of the hardest things to do as humans. He literally was like, Gilly, you know all the things, everything's there,
Mm-hmm.
but listen and follow.
Mm-hmm.
And listen and follow. And yes, he was a craniosacral and osteopathic medicine guy. So I'd actually be on the body and I'd listen and then I'd just go to where it was following. And like when the body on a core level feels listened to and not tried to do something different or resisting, it's like that the person can be like, wow, they're listening to me in their head. But when the body feels listened to, it heals in that way because it's a witnessing beyond telling someone something. So, like, the next part of an awakening journey is actually, again, like coming to the space of like, no, there is actually something greater that is even leading me. I am not, and it's like I am in no way someone's therapist, coach, doctor, healer, maybe in title as I am, but it's like I am just a space to open to what they already know, to
Mm-hmm.
open to the literally living awareness and intelligence and that agendaless presence that I experience in sessions of my own and bring it to the person. So when you can experience that and then bring it in relationship and bring it into your practice and bring it into your family and your partnerships, it's so much greater.
Yeah, I mean that's a skill in itself that for most people, at least for me, it took me some time to develop that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what is space holding,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what is like I was hearing those terms and then I actually had to like join men's circles and really experience and witness what that looked like so that I could fully understand, like,
Mm-hmm.
understand
Mm-hmm.
what that felt like so that then I could do the same for others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of times in society, people will listen to respond.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like thinking, oh, I'm going to say this back,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is like just listening without thinking about how you're going to respond,
Mm-hmm.
what it is it's bringing up in you. It's just being fully present with that
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that space, I think that's what makes you such an amazing
Mm-hmm.
practitioner is that you're fully there, at least with the sessions that I've had with you, where you're just fully there. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just with that person, really tuning into their energy, tuning into their field, and then uh, diagnosing according to that, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that got brought up to me recently was like we have the mental,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like going to a psychologist, right? Like sitting and talking.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain level that can get you to. Then there's the body, which is like the myofascial system, the tightness in the bones and or in the muscles and around the bones and things like that, the cartilage, all that whole system, the
Mm-hmm.
physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
aspect,
Mm-hmm.
which was really interesting because one of the guests I had on here, she was like, "Hey, if you want to address the physical, you can listen to mantra, for example, right? Where it's like if we're having lower back pain, you can play a root chakra mantra and tune in to where and if there's any spiritual misalignments there.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody can keep coming in, like for physical therapy, I would see people coming in for the same body part every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a cycle. If they
Mm-hmm.
didn't heal the emotional and the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, it would
Mm-hmm.
come back around, same surgery
Yep.
or a slightly different surgery, but in the same spot. And they weren't looking at those deeper aspects of it.
Yeah.
And so I love how Chinese medicine and acupuncture really embodies and encompasses all that. And so did they teach you or with what you've learned, have you been able to incorporate some of those spiritual components as well?
Oh yeah, totally. It's what's so cool. It's so crazy about the program actually. So every point is a number because number systems are easier to memorize and to know.
Yeah.
But every point has a spirit point, and there's an entire book of all the points and their
Mhm.
spirits. And so on the side, I would be studying that because I'm like, oh, when they're talking about the heart kidney connection, oh my gosh, if their heart and kidneys are disconnected, like the kidney is the root that would go along with the root chakra.
Mhm.
So then the spirit of that, it's like they're not in communication. So there is such a spiritual aspect. And I mean, I just believe that there's so much connected to all four aspects, and I wish that they taught that way in school because still school is a little bit more of an Americanized system. But like I had to dive into that on my own, and when you were speaking, I got so excited because you're listing all the spaces, and there is that like gap. Like there's the gap in certain spaces where it's like, why is this wound still reoccurring?
Mhm.
Like, what is the actual core? And what I'm so excited about after, okay, I treated for 11 or 12 years, and through all of that, like Chinese medicine was my foundation and my basis. But then it was like, how do I take it into personality patterns, into attachment styles, into internal family systems, into these deeper identities, these developmental stages? Because Chinese medicine does developmental stages in a different way, and they do the elements, which it actually lines up with the entire chakra system.
Mhm.
So me and my best friend, as you know, Summer,
Mhm.
she was going through a similar awakening journey, but on her own, like on her own, it was a little bit different. I think mine was more descending to ascending. Like I felt the body first and then came up, and she fully left her body and then didn't know how to like come back to the body.
Mm.
So then it's like, okay, you're meeting in the heart, and how can we be this transmission of everything that we've learned and create like a map of like how these specific core wounds are continuing to come back. So how do we use ancient medicine with the chakra system, I think is the basis, and Chinese medicine to combine and then bring in all these a little more newer age, like, because I think the way that we have attachments with people. Because again, what I was sharing, you can do all this awakening on your own. Like a client could be like, wow, I start to feel super great in my own body. But then the second they come into contact with community or the world or work or a relationship, all these different aspects come out. So then the core wound needs to be dove into. So like that, I would say is like my deepest work. And when I started healing those core wounds, that was like the epiphany of all of my like spiritual awakening.
Mhm.
It was like connecting to me to the beauty of every past life, of every present life, of just like such deep connection and trust in God, in greater power, in the universe. Like it was like, oh, all these wounds have been like hold like regardless of all the healing I've done, these patterns are still unconsciously like somehow paving how I see the world
Yeah.
in a way. And when you can cut through those and actually come into like deep joy and bliss and still experience like the contraction and the fear, but it's coming from a place of like so much expansion
Hmm.
through that. And so that feels so exciting because it's like this is, my chronic health lasted until about probably a year ago. And so I had a bunch more awakenings through that with like a near-death experience in my body, um, connecting to losing like, heartbreak is another, I think, avenue for so many people.
Yeah.
Like when you actually experience the breaking and let yourself completely let go of these patterns and attachments. But I would say where I am today, because I have been a transmission for a lot of these different healings, and there was still a lot of pain I was holding on to, and there was still something that wasn't fully clicking until I discovered like the connection between all of these systems
Hmm.
and the wisdom of taking all of these systems into one and healing that in my own way and then being that mirror for others.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say that it's been so beautiful knowing you for the last 5, 6 years and watching the ways that you've found all these different modalities and what's the name of the program that you just finished?
Oh, the Luminous
Yeah, Luminous.
Institute. Yeah.
Yeah, the Luminous Institute. All these different ways that you're continuing to expand
Mm,
and look at yourself and dive into self and clear these aspects of self.
hmm
And it's so important for me to continue to be the student,
hmm
right? To continue to just keep learning, to keep opening, to keep uh, showing up just as like, okay, what can I learn today? You
hmm
know?
Exactly. Every day with fresh eyes.
Yeah,
Like you're a little kid. Like,
yeah.
what am I
Well, that's
kid?
that's why I think you and I connect so much is
Mm,
because
mm,
I've really made it a huge priority to connect to my inner child and allow the little boy to still be present in my life.
mhm,
So to me, it looks so many different ways, but like that's how I'm able to work with kids.
mhm,
And for the last year, I was doing physical therapy with kids, and that was super awesome. Just being able to like really feel them and connect with them on that deeper level. And if I wasn't if I hadn't gone through that self process of really staying connected to my inner child and really loving on him and showing him love, then I believe I wouldn't be able to feel them as much, and connect with
mhm,
them on like these deeper levels. And the kids that are here now, they're such star children, and I believe our generation is here to really like show them like you don't have to like shut it down like I did. Like there's all these people now that can be your guides and can show you, and there's so many examples of my friends who are doing it for their kids, and I love seeing it so much, and we can come back to that, but I was really curious if you had any like tools or suggestions from what you learned up till now that people can address those spiritual aspects of self when they have worked with the physical body and they have worked with the mental side of things. Like besides mantra, have you found any other tools to like really hone in on those chakras and those other aspects of the body that are in the energetic body or in the aura, however you want to call it?
mm, mhm. Well, there's a physical body, as we shared, and mental, emotional, and soul.
Hmm.
Soul or spirit, I would say. And soul is like our unique essence that we come on this earth to be. We have this unique essence. Even though, it's like, okay, there's oneness, but then we do through the pineal gland. Actually, that's the imprint of our unique soul essence. Like we do have these different gifts to share. So when you name tools, it's like, I mean, one of the most simple tools is being able to scan your body and feel where there are areas that don't have as much energy in them. Like when you actually go down your chakra systems, do I feel numb? And starting to actually name the qualities, because when you name the qualities, it connects the brain with the mind, with the spirit. It's
Mm.
like connecting them because I think naming is such a beautiful thing because we have this voice for a reason. Like you can heal in silence, but it's like even talking to yourself. It's like, okay, so if I were to scan my body from root to crown, and then we go out to the extremities as well, but really starting to the energy centers, it's like, where do I feel that there's maybe calm energy, over energy, like sparkly, bubbly, stagnant, heavy, dense, contracted, expanded, and then tuning into, okay, that's an area that I actually believe, and from my studies, and it's like, this is why I love to incorporate that if we feel lack somewhere, there is nothing wrong. That is not an area. Same with Chinese medicine. They look at excess and deficiency.
Mhm.
I'm not being like, oh, your kidneys are deficient. And sometimes with my clients, they'll be like, what do you mean they're deficient? I'm like, right now, there's just a lack of energy, but your body knows when we just balance it up where the excess is, then it will bring the energy to the deficiency.
Mhm.
So you can do that within your own system through breath, through silence, like through meditation, through stillness. But it's also recognizing that like this is actually where a huge gift lies.
Mhm.
So where there could be something quote unquote off, there's actually like I love to bring it into let's find the gift there. And then there's a way that it distorts from its essence. So how do we come to connect with like, oh my gosh, there's something here, and what does that part of my body need right now?
Mhm.
I mean, that's a very simple one. There's so many different tools. Do you have any other questions?
Well, as you were speaking, I was thinking about how Reiki also works with the
Uh-huh.
spiritual body,
Yep,
and different aspects like integrated energy therapy, where we're working with the aura,
totally.
with angels. We can call upon angels to
Yep.
help with the spiritual aspects. We can go into these deeper spaces of meditation where there is that stillness, and then from that stillness
Mm,
there can be questions asked about like, where is my body out of balance, where is the energy, like the spiritual aspect, out of balance, and the more I'm able to reach those still spaces,
mm-hmm,
the more I'm able to receive the answers, because
mm,
I'm not hearing anything except for my guides or higher self or creator, whoever you're connecting with at that moment, you
mm-hmm,
know. Those are some that come to mind for me right now.
mm-hmm. Do you have any questions? No, never mind. Something just popped into my mind, and I mean, this is a crazy experience to actually feel because we can have these elevated awakenings in ourselves, by ourselves, with other in community, with plant medicine or with some experience. But one thing that I haven't touched on yet that feels so important is as I've talked about healing in community and relationships, it's like really coming back to healing with family because
Hmm.
these are where our core wounds stem, and to actually be at a space to shift the patterns that have been playing out in dynamics with your family is what is truly going to shift the patterns within yourself and for your future children and for all those around you. So I think on top of all of the studies and other healings, like there was a deeper part of me that knew because my first awakening like started with like it was very obvious that there was something in my family line, which I think so many people have this, and to really go into instead of getting upset, because the first part can be like, wow, my parents were controlling or they were manipulative or they were this, and I'm going to blame them. Maybe our ego wants to do that. It's like, okay, how can I truly sit and look at myself and see how these have played out and not shame them again or be guilty or like it's like we actually have to rewire the neural pathway to a new way of being, to a new sense of safety, to an imprint of belonging, to an imprint of the heart.
Hmm.
Um, so that is like such a huge monumental aspect of healing and awakening journeys. I think personally, and again, this is like my view, there cannot be full embodiment of awakening if you haven't touched. And it doesn't if you haven't touched the generational healing. And it doesn't mean that everything has to be healed with your family because we don't know how they're going to respond, but it's like within you. It's like,
Right.
how are you
Towards like, yeah,
responding?
right. Yeah, like feeling towards them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you take that moment and connect to higher power? And know that, like, how am I going to respond? Is that a nervous system reaction? Is that a parasympathetic reaction? Is that a defense because there's fear? Like, really, like, again, like, so much of the awakening journey is looking at yourself and shining these parts on yourself so deeply. And it is not easy. It is not for the faint of the heart. And I think that's where like true healing and embodiment, like that's the catalyst through that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm really happy that you brought that up because what came through while you were sharing was just something as simple as changing the question sometimes.
Mm,
Like
mm,
instead of why is this happening to me?
mhm,
What is this teaching me? Or
mhm,
what is this trying to teach me?
mhm,
Right? For me, that was monumental
mhm,
because something would happen in my life and I'm like, oh man, why is this happening again? Or
yeah.
why is this happening? Period, right? Like,
Mhm,
gosh, I mean, things were going great, and here it is shifting everything, shaking it up. And
mhm,
then when I shifted that, with a lot of like belief, like changing of belief patterns
mhm,
and programs from family lineage or from societal imprint or TV, whatever, wherever it came from, it doesn't really matter. Yeah,
schools,
yeah, wherever.
playground.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It doesn't really matter where it came from. For me, it was that little shift of saying, why is this happening to me versus what is this teaching me? And then instead of like being like really emotional about it, I transmuted that into being like, okay, how can I um, look at this with curiosity?
Mm,
How can I just be in that inner child mode of just like,
mhm,
oh, look, it's a bug. It's a little grasshopper that I don't know anything about yet. Like, how can I use that kind of energy to be like, okay, I'm really just curious about what where this is stemming from because then it takes off that pressure, right? It's like taking off the pressure off of myself of like, oh God, I gotta heal this now, right? Like it's like, okay, I can look at it with curiosity. And then the next level of the tool, call them tools, right? But the next level of my awareness with it was being like, okay, I I'm curious about it. Now I'm setting an intention to call in all the people, all my spirit guides, all of the experiences I need to have to give me the clarity and to really understand maybe this blind spot that maybe before I wasn't aware of, right? And then with that, with those awarenesses, of like, okay, uh, I'm I'm guided to whoever is going to help me really understand this or heal this. I'm open to however spirit wants it to come in. And then from that space, it's like, okay, then it started to really open up for me because I wasn't putting so much pressure on myself to like, I need it now. It was
mhm,
like, okay, it'll come and it's divine timing. And when I kind of let go and released, it would happen very quickly.
Okay.
Did you ever experience anything like that?
And which aspect you shared a lot? I
Uh,
feel like we've been going
yeah.
and like I really want to dive into some of the core of them versus
Yeah.
like bopping all around. So I got a little lost because I was speaking about something, so I just got a little confused. So what are you asking?
Like with that element of going into that, what you were saying, right?
Hmm.
Like with the family lineage and the programs, I was talking about how I was able to get into those spaces by taking the pressure off of myself, going and setting an intention to call in the people that were going to guide me
Okay.
to
Okay.
heal those parts of myself,
Mm.
and kind of sharing the steps that I took to get to those deeper aspects of my family lineage and the 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 deeper wounds and traumas that needed to
Mm.
be addressed and looked at.
Hmm. So your question.
So my question was like, did you go through any of those similar steps of like um asking like changing the question to like, what is this teaching me, and getting more
Yeah.
curious about it, like those aspects?
Yeah, of course. I turned everything internally. Like I looked at every part of myself and yeah, I mean, I dealt with chronic health all my life, so that could have completely had a conditioning of like what's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to be a warrior of getting through chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, Lyme disease, chronic Epstein-Barr, was like I had to look at all of the parts and to see where that was coming from and to know that this was happening for me. And through that, it was like when I look back at my life, a lot of my other spiritual awakenings were some of like getting in a completely abusive relationship. It was like, okay, I'm not blaming myself for like getting there, and I'm not blaming him. But what are the parts in me that were attaching onto that? And that was really where a lot of my family healing happened because it wasn't like they did this to me because that's the victim. And I think victim is a big, a big condition that a lot of people have unconsciously. There's some part of like, oh, that person cut me off, or like, oh, that person did this to me. And so that mind shift change as to like I get to choose my reality
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing wrong. Again, going back to like there's nothing wrong with me. I have everything I need, and I like there can be like an excitement of like I get to experience this like pain and joy and bliss and pleasure all at once by looking at these parts and actually liberating them to alchemize them. So I think the biggest aspect for me was not self-abandoning. And that was a big place in my journey with my family where it was like the people pleaser that is controlling unconsciously to keep herself safe and to look at it as like, no, I have the quote unquote abandonment wound, but actually I've been abandoning myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like the belonging wound. Oh, do I believe that I belong myself? So it's like coming back, continuing to come back and look at where these stem from, and then look at it in your life of like, okay, I'm going to continue to show up for how I would show up for myself to how I show up with others. So that's big with family too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've shared with you so much about my journey with my dad, but the biggest lessons, I think, were the unpatterning of how I used to respond and then the assertion of like what I needed. Really being like, even with the fear of loss, what do I need? I need space.
Mm.
I need time on my own because I know that like, I know and I can trust and surrender that we're going to continue doing this if I don't take a step back. And
Mm.
I could see that, like, with that, that something beautiful was going to happen in a reconnection because I created this new reality in my being that was like, this is how I love and this is how I deserve to be loved.
Mm,
And I am worthy of this kind of love because it's the universe loves, it's God's love, it's spirit's love, whatever you call it in any way. And it's like, I am unconditionally loved through anything. And there's so much forgiveness through that. And so the people in your life that you start like mirroring that to will either attack you more
hmm
and then you get to create boundaries, or they will be invited in a way. So there's like this dance of like really like, can I mirror the imprint of how I want to be seen and how I want to be felt and how I want others to feel?
hmm
It's like, the saying, and treat others the way you want to be treated. It's like treat yourself the way you want to be treated, or
Right.
you want others to treat you.
hmm
It can go both ways.
Yeah,
So,
because it's like the empowering piece of that, right,
yeah.
is like I get to decide how I'm treated,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like I'm not going to allow anybody into my field, into my space
Yeah.
that isn't treating me with respect,
Yes.
isn't loving, isn't caring, isn't
Mm.
like looking out for my like
Mm.
excited for when I
Mm.
have good like
Celebrate.
yeah, like
Yeah.
celebrating together, right? And like
Yeah.
and it took a while
Uh,
for me, for example, right? Like it took a while to get to that place because for the longest time, like in high school, I was attracting a lot of mirrors, looking back at it of how my either my father or my mother would treat me, right?
totally. Which I think a lot of us do. And I think that's like the deepest core of like people's wounding is they're literally like dating their mom or dating their father.
Mhm.
Or dating in the dynamic that they see. And that's like what our nervous systems as a child, and this comes back to the developmental stages as well. Our nervous systems like learn, like we merge almost with our parents' nervous system. So it's like we're learning their anxiety or their avoidance or their dysregulation. So it's not only that we're like mirroring their behaviors, like our actual body, which is why I love Chinese medicine too, because it's all about nervous system healing and it's bringing your body back to your balance, back to balance and safety, not the safety, the quote unquote fake safety. Or I don't even want to say fake safety because it kept us safe when we were young.
Right.
It protected us. There are so many parts and there are so many protectors that keep us safe. So we can honor those. I learned this something recently. Instead of calling it like a shadow or a part, it's like they're actually like these protectors aren't bad. There's nothing we have to go against. Oh gosh, I forgot. It was something about being like a genius in a way. They're actually genius because they kept our system safe in the environment that we were in.
hmm
So now we get to unravel our environment into a new sense of safety within ourselves. Who do we surround ourselves with? Who do we listen to? What do we take in from people all around us?
hmm And I think you mentioned something earlier that was really powerful too,
Yeah.
which is learning how to set healthy boundaries. I
Yeah.
I had a really hard time with that because I was very people pleasing, and I got that from I think my one of my parents or both, right? Where it was like because somebody's acting a certain way, you just kind of go along with it. If it's not a big deal, just brush it off. But then it was like when I learned how to set healthy boundaries, which is like, I'm not gonna like, it's not okay to speak to me like that.
Hmm.
But it's more than that. It's like actually for me, it was like really embodying it.
Hmm.
And then all that just fell away when it was fully embodied. I didn't
Hmm.
really need to set the boundaries
Hmm.
because my energy was the boundary,
Hmm. Hmm.
the way I showed up, right? And then I surrounded myself with people that really cared and loved me and that wouldn't let anybody else talk to me like that.
Hmm.
So I was like, now I have this like surrounding loving energy all around me. So I don't need that
Yeah.
anymore,
And
you
some
know?
people think that boundaries aren't love. Like that's like a condition. If I speak what I need, like that's not love, or I'm going to lose, or I'm not going to be loved. When it's truly like boundaries are the distance where you can love yourself and someone else simultaneously. And
hmm
I love that quote. And that changed my life when I started somatic therapy, gosh, 7 years ago. Or longer than that. but it's like the discernment of the heart, like, because there is this question too, like we all want to be these open-hearted, bright, shining beings, and how can we have that joy, that light, that love, and also be discerning, which are boundaries. It's like there's discernment, which I look at as the eye of the heart is discernment. So you can be this loving, open-hearted being, and then there's also a boundary, and there's integrity in that. So that comes into the more of like the and it's not like, oh, I'm protecting myself or I'm not letting other people in. You can love people from afar,
Hmm.
and that's actually more beautiful than loving them from playing out in different patterns.
For sure, for sure. And that's, I hear that so often with people. It's like, does that mean I have to invite them back into my life? It's like, no, you can forgive them
Mm-hmm.
and love them from a distance and wish them well and
Mm-hmm.
even send them love.
Mm-hmm.
But they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be in our life
Mm-hmm.
or my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I that also brings up the topic of the other side of boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
because there's people that overuse boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and use them to like as protectors of actually them actually opening and feeling
Mm-hmm.
more, right? Where it's like it's actually a boundary from that person being able to connect more.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen it sometimes in the polyamorous community
Yeah.
where people are like, "Oh, I love everyone,"
Mm-hmm.
but then it's like, "No, no, no, don't get too close.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dating all these other people. Don't get too close, and like there's a discernment, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
with like a boundary that's actually helping us grow because
Mm-hmm.
that person isn't going to be bringing us down when we've already healed it inside of ourselves, when they're continuing
Mm-hmm.
a certain program or pattern that we've already healed, versus like a boundary with somebody who's actually trying to come into our life with such love and we're like, oh no, that's too much love, or no, 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 that's too much this or that, right? And I think that discernment sometimes can be a blind spot for people. And I've seen it in our community in San Diego where people would put up way too many boundaries and they're like, no, 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 I can't,
Yeah.
I can't go out or I can't do this. And it's like,
Well, I would say, yeah, like that's a protection.
right,
Yeah.
right. That's like
That's
a
when you're
too
taking
much.
boundaries to protection. And that's what I was sharing before. There's like protection versus like a loving boundary.
Mhm,
That's when you're like kind of coming out with armor on.
mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
continue. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because uh sometimes I believe what I've seen with my friends and with myself is there's these characters, right? Whether it's in relationship, a romantic relationship, whether it's friends, whether it's community, no matter where you go, you can't run from yourself.
No.
And so,
You hear that one, folks?
yeah, that's a big one.
You are your own best friend.
Yeah, so the characters show up with different faces.
Yeah.
And to me, from what I've experienced is that it gets a little bit harder each time we don't want to face
Oh, yeah.
that deeper part of self. And if somebody keeps putting up boundaries and cutting people out and being like, "Oh, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at that," but it's something that spirit's trying to show them
Yep.
inside self,
Yep.
that's an unhealthy way of putting up
Yep.
boundaries, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, but where's that balance, right? Where
Totally.
it's like, how can I use what Spirit's showing me through this character
Yeah.
to show me inside myself, oh wow, okay.
Yep.
And I think that the way to really discern that is how it feels in the body.
Totally. I was literally just thinking when you said that, it's like resistance versus intuition. Because our intuition, and that can be challenging sometimes. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
am I resisting that because I know it's meant for me? And it might heal things, or it might make me, again, like look at those deeper parts, like, ah, I don't like that person, or like that person's energy is just really bothering me. And it's like, can I use them? It doesn't mean I have to be their best friend, but can I continue looking at them and seeing what they're doing that there's a part of me that I've disowned in myself
Right.
that I actually really want.
Mm-hmm.
That I actually really want to be that like person that's on Instagram all the time and I'm like, oh my God, I'm judging them. Or like in certain ways, it's like we who judge in our own ways. And again, there's no blame and shame for judging. That is a conditioning of the mind too. But it's like, how can I lean into that versus knowing like there's an intuitive feeling in the body where it's like that is just someone that I actually don't resonate with, and there's not something I need to look at there. But it's a fine dance. It is
Really
like a
fine
fine
line.
tightrope
Yeah.
of like, so for me, how I've like done that is I haven't looked away from someone that I get a little activated by. I've continued to look until I'm like, okay, let me embody that and let me not shut them out. And then there's more of like a clear energy of like, oh, I just actually don't have full resonance with this person. And there's nothing wrong with that because when we do clear people out of our life that we aren't in full resonance with, we give space for more that are. But it is like it's not looking away when something triggers you. So I think that's the big thing. Even if
Right.
you have an intuitive hit, like I don't want to be this person's friend,
Right.
it's still like I'm not going to look away from you. I'm gonna turn inward and like mirror that and like really see again, like going back to these disowned parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And these parts of ourselves were disowned because they were shamed in some way by ourselves or society or an adult figure or culture. And that's where these core wounds stem from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it brings up an example for me of like one of my friends one time I showed them a video on YouTube, somebody they didn't know,
Yeah.
complete stranger, and they were like, "Oh, that guy's mental,"
Ah.
or "That guy's, crazy," or
Yep.
whatever, right? And I'm like, you don't know that person.
Mm,
Why do you feel so activated by them?
mm,
And so that was really interesting. And I'm like, do you think that there's something there for you to look at or
mm,
for a part of self that maybe hasn't been fully embodied
mm,
yet, or maybe hasn't been fully
mm.
accepted inside ourselves, right? That's another aspect of
Yeah.
this, right? Where it can be something that we see that we don't like,
Yeah.
but maybe
Yep.
at one point in our life we were showing up like that,
Mm.
and that hasn't been fully embodied in ourselves, where it's like, oh, I love that part of myself, even though might have been a jerk at one point in high school or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's another aspect of it. And then the other piece that came up was like during like a yoga class, Kundalini yoga in particular, I would get really triggered by the teacher. It didn't matter who it was. It could be me teaching on YouTube and I would get triggered by it.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, okay, what's happening here?
Mm.
Why is it no matter who it is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm triggered by it? And it was like they're telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm choo but I'm and then the rewiring was like I'm choosing to do this. This
Mm-hmm.
is really good for me. This is really helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like seeing that little boy being like rebellious, right? Like where he's like, nope, I'm not gonna listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And wanting that freedom and that
Mm-hmm.
that like expression, right? So that
Totally.
that was really interesting to see because it could be myself
Yep.
just on a video, which was fascinating.
Yep.
Like the character that could be teaching this version of myself could have been an old version
Ah.
that was recorded, which is really fascinating to me, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So what do you how do you feel about that? Have you had any experiences with that?
Getting triggered by
Yeah, just like somebody you didn't ever even meet or a YouTube video and like what was your process like briefly with
mm.
that?
Yeah, I think it was what I would go back to is kind of what I shared before as I in the beginning, it was really hard for me to look at.
Hmm.
I would say like in the beginning of my whole entire awakening and healing journey, it was like I did notice there were still parts of me where the victim or just like, oh, they're just like annoying
Hmm.
or like that's just crazy.
Hmm.
And then the part that started unraveling is as we do learn this, which it's like, is it a mirror or is it a trigger or is it an old attachment? Like, again, because then you don't want to go too far to the other side because that could be like everyone that triggers me is like it's in within me. There are people out there that are doing things that are not always, you don't always have to look at yourself with that.
Hmm.
So there's again a fine line of all this healing work. It's like going this way or that way. But I think with me, yeah, it began to be like when there was a consistent pattern.
Hmm.
Okay, this is a funny one to bring up. Speaking of acupuncture, and I brought in social media. So I had a big resistance to social media. I didn't like a phone. I wish, like, I was brought up just in nature to where, like, and we all were in the 90s. Like, phones were just like not even a thing. Like, there was the human interaction, and that's what I craved and I love so much. And so social media, when people started saying to build my business, because I told when I was in business class in college and in my master's and doctorate program, they had us all raise our hand and share our marketing strategy. And I was like, I'm just going to be a living embodiment of who I am and I'm going to talk to people.
Hmm.
And they're like, no way, you guys. I built my business all on word of mouth. It was all referral based. I knew that me continuing to spend time on myself and the wisdom within me versus outputting on social media. And I am like, that was so much time. And some people are so good at that.
Hmm.
And that's their gift. I had a different gift, but what started triggering me so much was my fellow students that started like Instagrams for their businesses and would just post every day. And I would literally sit there and be like, how are they doing this? How do they even have time to do this? Like I was judging
Hmm.
and I was going in a cycle of judging because it wasn't something. And so I protected that one for a while because it wasn't something that I wanted.
Hmm.
I thought.
Hmm.
I didn't think I wanted it because I'm like, but I just walk outside and people come up to me, what are you doing? Oh, you're doing Qigong and sunrise, which is what I did every day. Why? Tell me more. And like I'd meet people on the beach. How are you who you are? And then it was just like the ripple effect of so many people. So I was like, I actually don't need Instagram. But in this world today, because I had so much resistance to technology, like, I know that there's a greater transmission and greater message for people to get out to people that they don't just meet in person. So I do see the beauty of how it can expand to so like the entire world.
Hmm.
So when it continued happening. And then I finally turned it from just like pushing it away to like, Gilly, let me look at that part of myself.
Hmm.
Oh, there was a part of myself that wanted to have it be easy and not take so much time to share and have the people that just like film themselves and don't even know when I'm like sitting there being like, oh, I don't want to film myself. I don't want to bring a camera. Like now it's annoying. Like there's something that's technology. Like I would just literally push that all aside until I sat with the one that like really wanted to reach more people in that way and actually wanted to dive through the resistance and not I in no means want to be an Instagram or TikTok. I don't have a TikTok, but like an Instagram or TikTok like viral. I never went in that, but it was like there is something bigger that when I have these revelations, I want it to be easeful to just share
Hmm.
and just post it and not care.
Yeah.
Like how people are doing the everyday challenge, showing up every fucking day. I'm like, that would be so difficult for me. So I was looking at and I was like, wow, I have a big perception of how I am seen through the internet, through
Mm.
people that I don't know.
Mm.
People that I do know, I am fucking quirky. I'm
Mm.
weird. That's how it was with like why my clients love me is because I was so who I am and I would say wrong things and I would mix my words up and I would make up my own words
Right.
and they loved it, but they trusted me with their fucking hobby bodies. Now I'm doing it. My hottie, my body. They trusted me with all of their help. They trusted me with their children, their families. Like I treated families and children and everyone would share and share but there is still a part of me that was so much more self-conscious behind the screen.
Mm.
Like I even notice it sometimes now, and I'll be fully transparent. I'll look over and be like, "Whoa, I'm on the screen. Okay, I'm gonna look at you now." And then I'm like, "Ah."
Uh-huh.
So there was something for me to look at there, even though I could avoid it in so many ways by dismantling and being like, "Well, being a human person is better anyway." Versus like, no, it is like it is a time in our life now that technology is so vital to how the world is evolving. Like humans are evolving, technology is evolving, our whole consciousness is evolving. So a way to spread that, just like we started with like telephones and or telegrams. It's like it's evolved so much. So it's using that versus resisting it. So finding a balance.
Right.
So yeah, it's a long-winded story of like screen stuff, but
No, that's a great
to
example.
look at.
That's a great example. No, it's such a big part of our society now, and everybody wants to be seen, like you said.
Yeah.
And so it's
But how am I being seen?
right, right. Is it just my highlights, like the best parts? So yeah, that's a big topic for sure. But I think we covered a lot of really awesome topics and really dove into it. It's
Yeah.
been such an honor to have you on, Gilly. Thank you so much. I love you, and
You're so welcome.
this was awesome. And you're always welcome back on the podcast anytime.
Thank you.
Now that you're moving to Vegas,
Potentially,
yeah,
potentially.
potentially,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
One thing I just want to say about you and this podcast, because I was noticing, I'm like, wow, like the depth and the breadth and the width that we can go, but still stay in a coherent manner. Because we touched on so many things, and I'm like, and this is like who you are. You can go anywhere. And like that was a part of our friendship too. Any deep conversation that we dropped in. So this podcast felt very like similar to us sharing our experiences and healing and growing from each other
Hmm.
because it was like your example to my example to yours to then a deeper topic. How does that show up in your life? How did that show up? Then through that, how can it support others?
Hmm.
And it's like it just felt so it didn't feel like a podcast where like I was interviewed, like with sometimes can put a lot of pressure on it.
Hmm.
It felt like, as you call it, spiritual conversations.
Hmm. Thank
So
you.
really bringing that conversation aspect in, I just wanted to say this on the podcast because I was like, wow, this is different. And it is
Thank
just a
you.
conversation. And you
Thank
learn so much from conversations
Yeah,
and listening. And sometimes people don't hear them when they're just one-on-one. So now we get to share it
I know.
with the
It's the
world.
best.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll have to do another one in a few months. Yeah, because we have a lot more we could talk about for sure.
Yeah.
So until next time, Gilly, thank you so much.